All right, even though Brady's not back yet, I'm going to start up. So what have we done so far? If you look up on the screen, we, of course, added our using static system.console. We're going to use that later. That's why that's in there. We created a person class. We defined a series of constants, some of which are default values, the others of which are minimums and maximum. Then we defined 8 variables, because that's what our person has. Each one of our people has a first name, a last name, a social security number, a height, a weight, an eye color, a hair color, and a gender. All right, so we did that. Then we created our constructors. Our first constructor supposed that we were passing in nothing. So we were setting unknown to the first name and last name and defaults to all the other 6 fields. Then we did the to-arc constructor, where we passed in a first name and a last name and set them accordingly and called the default for the other 6. Then we just did our 8-arc constructor, where we're passing in everything. But we said that it wasn't sufficient because we were doing no validation for the height and no validation for the weight. So rather than just saying this dot height equals H and this dot weight equals W, we called our own user-defined methods validate height, where we passed in the local height, and validate weight, where we passed in the local weight. So for those, we had 2 versions. One where we passed in nothing, and we're going to use that in just a minute, and one where we passed in the value. We used a question mark colon operator that said, if the height is within range, then grab that local height we just put in and set it to our instance variable. Do you realize, please look at the screen here, this height right here, this right there, that is this. Does that make sense? That's what it is. Same thing with the W and the weight, etc. That's this one we're attempting to set. These are called, instead of even program variables, I probably should have called these instance variables. Each instance or each object will have their own first name, their own last name, their own social security number, their own height, their own weight, their own eye color, their own hair color, and their own gender. That should make sense to you. All right? So what's left? Well, the only thing we didn't do, remember those property setters and getters? We didn't set any of those up yet. So that's what we're going to do now, and then we have to write a real short method, so we're going to do all that. I'm just going to put these right underneath our validate routines. And again, if you'll bear with me for a second, I want to type in the first one and put a comment there, and then type it in. I'm going to show you the long version and the short version. So, first name, property setters, and getters, long way. All right. Public, string, F name. This cannot be little f, little n like we had before. You've got to give it a different name. So you just change the caseness. That's what I did here. All right. So the get, return F name, and the set, F name equal value. All right, now everybody sees this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines of code, 11 lines of code. We can replace those 11 lines of code with 2 lines. Everybody hear that? So I'm going to grab this, and now I'm going to comment out all of this in just a second. But I want to put this in there again. But now I want to put it in the short way. And that is just public string, in fact it's one line, F name, curly brace, get, set. So that right there, what you see in front of you, this right here does the same thing as all of this. Now I can comment that out. You choose which one you want to use. If you say, well, I'm just learning it, it makes more sense to put it in like this, then do that. That's totally fine. Now, let me ask you a question. Please look up on the screen. Do I have to rewrite? I'm going to do the same thing with last name and social security number. Do I have to redo that? I'm just going to put them in the short way, okay? In your code, what you have, you've got the long way commented out and the short way for each one of these. I'm not going to do that. It's just too much typing. All right? So I'm not going to keep putting them in. So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to say last name, property getters and setters. And all I have to do is change that to L name. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the social security number. And that just saved us a lot of typing. Okay? I'll let you catch back up on that, and then we'll go on. Yes.
How does it know what to get and set?
Well, for the set, whatever you pass in goes into a magic variable called value. And it uses that. And the get just says return it. That's all it says. It's as though you wrote in there this. That's a shortcut. So this get is a shortcut for this, and this set is a shortcut for this. All right? And again, I'm going to say this, I'm not trying to sound like a smart aleck, but how does it know? Well, my friend Doug would say it's FM. FM, flamin' magic, but he wouldn't say flaming. But you get the idea. It's kind of like with a question mark colon. It's more or less a macro that somebody wrote, so it's a shortcut. All right? I don't know any other way to answer it other than that. So we've got three of our eight property getters and setters. Now, you don't have to do these in order, but I put them in order. Have you noticed how I've tried to put everything in order? To me, it makes much more sense, and I've said this before, if you've never, and Colin, you may or may not have ever heard this, but what we're doing now when we're setting this up is we're establishing our own standard. Does that make sense? Our own protocol, our own way of doing things. That's what you have to start doing, is figuring out how you want to set things up. And even if I don't agree with the way you set things up, even a bad standard is better than no standard at all. Now, not everybody is going to agree with what I just said, but at least if you've got a standard, if you've got a way that you write things, it'll make it easier for you when something doesn't work and you've got to go back and look for it because you'll know right where to go. Does that make sense? That's why I put these things, or tried to, pretty much in order. All right? Now, the author may not agree with the order that I used for all this stuff. That's okay. Now, what do we have left? Well, we've got the height and we got the weight. Okay, that'll be 4 and 5. And we've got the eye color, and we've got the hair color, and we've got the gender. All right? The good news is, I believe at least, where are we here? Wow. And I'm looking, I don't even think your stupid instructor even put in the setters and getters for the eye color and the hair color. And the, I don't think they're in there. So we're going to put them in right now. This is going to be out of order, but I'm going to grab this. Again, these errors will go away in just a minute. All right, and I'm going to put here eye color, getters and setters. Hair color, getters and setters. And finally, gender. Now, natural question would be, okay, Jeff, you left those off, but everything still works. Just because I didn't do sufficient enough testing. You want to always put all these in. You'll have to take my word for it. All right? It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I remember as a little kid getting like those paint by number sets. I don't know if you ever had one of those. But it's like, well, you're painting a Continental Soldier back in the 1770s. And you don't like a certain color, so you just don't paint it. Okay? Now, when you get done, you look at it and you look at the picture, and it's like, well, it's white and black in certain areas where that probably shouldn't be that color. It's incomplete. That's what we're doing if we leave all these out. All right? So we've got five or six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 of our 8 getter and setters. Does that make sense? We have 6. The only ones we don't have are height and weight. Since they're going to actually have code in there, I am going to put those at the bottom. So I'm going to put here height, setters, and getters. And this will be the long way because there is no short way to do this. And please, when you're done, I said this before, how many times now? When you are all done with this, oops, somehow just lost the line I typed in. But when you're all done, do it once and copy it, okay? That's what we want to do. So what we want to do here is we want the getter and setter for the weight. So this is the height and weight. So this is the height, property, setter, and getter. So this is wrong. This will be public int height. And we have to actually write these. Get. Okay. Return height. Set. This is where we call that validate weight or validate height routine, but we don't pass in a parameter. Notice all the squigglies are gone. If you're a quick typist, when you get done, copy all this, put it right below, change the H in height to a W in weight. Okay? Then we have one more method. It's going to be called display to write, and then we're done with this, and we'll jump over to main. But this says when we're trying to set the weight, all right, since we're trying to set it, call validate to make sure that it's valid. So again, I'm going to copy all this to the clipboard, come down here, paste it back in, change this to a W, change this to a W, and a W. All right, why am I getting that? Oh, I'll fix it in a minute. Let's just leave these up here so everybody can get that typed in. Oh, I know what it is. It's because this curly brace should be down here, I think. There we go. we have one more routine to write, and it's going to be called display. It's right at the end of this. I think it's on the last page, the back page of the last page of this. You want to start typing it and you can. It's just a bunch of write lines that's going to write everything out. So again, here were the height setters and getters long way, and here's the weight. Exactly the same as the height, exactly. So I think I should tab it. Except there's an H for weight instead of, a W for weight instead of an H for height. Other than that, it's the same thing. All right? So all that's left, I'm going to cheat, even though I shouldn't, but I'm going to cheat anyway. So here's the last routine right here. Display all object info. That's it. Now that should be everything. We haven't finished with main yet. We'll do that in just a minute. But that's the last routine that's on the screen right now. Again, it's also on the back. It's on page 6 of the bigger handout. Now, I have no idea exactly where we'll be a year from now, but the plan is you'll be doing almost the same exact thing, but you'll be doing it in Java. All right? Yes.
I was gonna ask, does it matter, or is there an order to like where you put your methods, your constructors, your?
The question was, does it matter the order in which you put these? Let me answer it at least partially. Most programmers, at least that I know of, and most of the time you see it in books like this too, at the top of your routine, you put your constants, then you put your variables after that, then you put your constructors. What you put after that, it depends. For instance, a year from now, we'll probably be using Eclipse, the Eclipse editor. The Eclipse editor, if all you want to do is to create these, something that looks like this, or they don't have a shortcut like that in Java, but if you want to create these, you tell Eclipse, there's a setting, and I'll show you how to do it, it's not hard, where you tell it generate getters and setters for me. So it puts them in, it does a get, then a set, then a get, then a set, then a get. See what I'm saying? Some people don't like that, and they immediately remove those, and they put all their gets together, then all their sets. It's just how anal you want to be about the whole thing. But it's pretty much classic that you put your constants, then your variables, then your constructors. But what you put after that, the order in which you do it is more or less up to you. All right, if you look on the screen, please, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back to my main now. And please look up on the screen. I did copy everything over, but I just want you to see this. This will create a Jeff object, then a Sandy object, then a Taylor, then a Kenzie, then a Chloe, then a Mark. But then it's going to print all of them out. So now I was getting an error on this, so I should be able to say Jeff.display. All right, so I'm going to do this. There's the Jeff information. I passed in nothing. So I get unknown F name or FN, unknown LN. There's the default social security number. There's the default height, the default weight, the default eye color, the default hair color, and the default gender. Does that make sense? That's doing what it's supposed to do. So even though I put them in this order, what you may want to do if you look up on the screen, Colin, you just asked about order, is I may want to go, and as soon as I create an object, just immediately right underneath it, put out the information to print it out. All right? I was creating the 6 objects, then printing them out, all 6. But you can create, print. The reason I'm telling you that, the reason that's important, is when we have exercises like this and we do it as a class, I'm trying to get it done basically in 2 hours. But I don't code like this. I would have gone and done just this one like this. Tested it to make sure it worked. So in other words, what I'm saying is if I was writing this, and this is how I did write it. You may not believe me. This is how I wrote it. I wrote all this, and what I did first, after I set up my constants and my variables, I wrote just this one. That's all I did. That's all that was in there. Then I went back into main and did this. I'm sorry, I also wrote the display. But then, so I could just check and see if the default one worked. Nothing else. Then I went back in and brought in the second one, where I could put in, I'm checking my second constructor. All right, and now I can take that one, and you should get this now, because if you look on the screen, there, I'll still get the first stuff for Jeff. Boom, I hit enter. Now, since I put in Sandy and Scott, it took those and it gave me the defaults for social security number, for height, for weight, for eye color, for hair color, and for gender. All right? Then what I did was I said, okay, that's all fine and dandy. But what I want to do here is I want to start testing for out of range stuff. So I check for an out of range height. All right? And with that out of range height, it should reset the height to our default height, because that's what we told it to do. All right? And our default height was, 77? 77. So when I run this, there's me, there's Sandy. Now see, the default height, which was set to like 900, has been reset to 77. In fact, I go to the point where, okay, now I've tested Jeff, so I don't have to display that one again. So I'm just going to comment this stuff out. I've tested Sandy. It looked fine. But now I want to make sure that this 960 that's right here gets reset to 77. And you can see it did. All right? So then I want to come in, I said, okay, now that one works. So I don't have to print that one out. Now I want to check and see if the weight that was set to 1,115, which is out of range, gets reset to our default. What's our default? 222. So now I've got that one. Oop, I guess I somehow lost the read line. So let me put that, oh, because I don't have the, there we go. So you can see that I reset the weight, which was like 1,115, has now been reset to the default weight of 22. Then I said, well, what if they're both wrong? So that's the Chloe one. That's an out of range height. That's an out of range weight. All right, now I can uncomment that. Check it out. And you'll notice for Chloe, the height was set to the default, the weight was set to the default. All right, then finally with the mark object that's in here, they're all valid. Valid first name, valid last name, valid social security number, valid height, valid weight, valid eye color, valid hair color, valid, this was the big thing, was the M. I want to make sure if I set that gets set correctly. So now I can comment out the Chloe display and comment back in the mark display. And you can see, all right, it looks wrong, 77 and 222, so something's wrong here. It actually does work, so I commented out something I shouldn't have, is my guess. The one that I gave you, all right, I want to run this one just so you see it, okay? The code that I gave you, all right, I want to go back to that one. Okay, there's the defaults for Jeff. There's the first name, last name, but the defaults for everything else. There's the height reset. There's the weight reset. There's the height and the weight reset. And that's everything valid. So what I gave you works. I'm going to give you some time. You've got an hour to try to get this working. What we'll do on Monday, we're going to do two things. All right? We're going to do another program as a class. And again, I'll give you a hard copy. All right? Then with one of the other programs that's in here, we're going to do part of it, and then you're going to have to do the rest. That's what we'll do on Tuesday. All right? So that's all that I had.